Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome back to Geometry. We are going to continue looking into conditional statements. Yesterday, we had a reading of If You Give a Pig a Pancake, that children's book, and we looked for the patterns and we saw a lot of if-then statements. And so we're going to continue looking into our if-then statements that we talked about yesterday, starting in the book. So let's get back into these conditional statements. So what we're working on is we're using deductive reasoning to construct and judge the validity of logical arguments that will consist of a set of premises and a conclusion. Today, we're specifically going to work on identifying and writing the converse, inverse, and contrapositive of a conditional statement. If you want to know if you have a good understanding of this topic, you want to look at scoring an 80% or higher, and that will let you know that you have a good handle on this topic. So yesterday we introduced conditional statements. We read the kids' book, If You Give a Pig a Pancake, and we discussed the patterns and what we saw. And so can anyone tell me what a conditional statement is? Elijah. Excellent. A conditional statement is just a sentence that is written in an if-then form. So again, if we think about the book we read yesterday, the one repeating conditional statement was, if you give a pig a pancake, then he will want some maple syrup. So the if-then creates the conditional statement. We also talked about the conditional statement has two parts. It has a hypothesis and a conclusion. Can anyone tell me what the hypothesis, where do we locate the hypothesis? Luther. Awesome, absolutely. The hypothesis comes after the word if, and symbolically, we represent the hypothesis with the letter P. Very good. What about the conclusion? Where do we find the conclusion in our sentence? Micah. Absolutely. The conclusion comes after the word then. We also represent the conclusion as the letter Q when we get into symbolic form, which we won't get into too much today. We will down the road. So our hypothesis comes after the word if, and our conclusion comes after the word then. So that's everything that we talked about yesterday. Again, we did look at the symbolic notation down here at the bottom. P implies Q, or P results in Q, but that is going to be something that we will get more into later on. So let's actually look at some examples. So again, from our book yesterday, if you give a pig a pancake, then she will want some maple syrup. So the first thing we're going to do is identify the hypothesis and the conclusion. So Matthew, if you give a pig a pancake, then she will want some maple syrup. What's our hypothesis? Our hypothesis comes after the word if, yes. Good. You give a pig a pancake is your hypothesis. Excellent. Now, we also want to identify the conclusion. Remember, conclusion comes after the word then. So, Blaze, what is our conclusion from our conditional statement? Fantastic. She will want some maple syrup. So if you give a pig a pancake, then she'll want some maple syrup is our conditional. What comes after the word if is our hypothesis. What comes after the word then is our conclusion. Perfect. Now, this conditional we call our original conditional statement. And to write the converse, inverse, and contrapositive, we're actually just going to manipulate this sentence and change its form. So again, there are four: your conditional, the converse, the inverse, the contrapositive, and we're going to talk about those. So what is the converse? Okay. The converse transposes the P and the Q. It switches your hypothesis and conclusion. So if you want a keyword to remember for converse, when you think converse, switch should pop into your head. So let's see that in action so it makes sense. If you give a pig a pancake, then she will want some maple syrup. So again, what we're going to do is we're going to take our hypothesis and we're going to switch it with our conclusion. So these are going to switch. So what would that look like? Would anyone like to try? Kylie. Perfect. If, and again, they started with you. If you want to be literal, you can just stay with she. If she will want some maple syrup, and sometimes these sound a little awkward grammatically, okay, you would be okay with saying if she wants some maple syrup. But if we're literally switching, this is what it would look like. Then you give a pig a pancake. So our hypothesis moved to the back behind our then, and our conclusion moved to the front after the word if. And what you guys will find writing these sentences, sometimes they will not be true, and sometimes they won't make a lot of sense. That's all right. We're just doing the action that the sentence requires. Okay, right now we're not worried about is it true, is it false, does it make a whole lot of sense. So converse. Converse means switch. Switch your hypothesis and your conclusion. The second one is inverse. Now inverse is completely different. Inverse, you want to negate both your P and Q. So we're going to negate both our hypothesis and our conclusion. Negate means make the meaning the opposite. Okay, so in other words, if you say it is sunny, to negate that, you want it to mean the opposite. So you would say it is not sunny. If you wanted to negate I'm not happy, the opposite of I'm not happy is I am happy. Okay, so negate, a lot of times you can just put the word not into your sentence, but sometimes you have to be careful of that, and so that you don't have a double negative. So you don't say something like I'm not happy. So again, the symbolic notation, that's what it would look like. If not P, then not Q. So we go back to our original statement. If you give a pig a pancake, then she will want some maple syrup. And what we're going to do is we're going to negate both parts. Okay, so if you give a pig a pancake, how can we negate that? How can we make the meaning the opposite? Good, Levi. We would say if you don't or won't give a pig a pancake. If you don't give a pig a pancake, and again, you could say won't or will not or do not. Now, how do we negate the conclusion? Brianna. Great job. Then she will not or won't want some maple syrup. Perfect. So again, inverse, your keyword, if you need a keyword to remember, is negate. It means make it mean the opposite. Okay. Again, a lot of times it just means inserting the word not. You do want it to be grammatically correct, so be very careful of that. Okay. But if you don't give a pig a pancake, then she won't want some maple syrup. We took the hypothesis and negated it, and we took the conclusion and negated it. Questions so far? All right, moving right along. The last one we're going to look at is the contrapositive. And if you notice, it is the longest word out of the three, and it means we have to do the most to it. That's how some people remember it. It's the longest word, so it has the most to do in it. So we transpose and negate the P and the Q. So we're going to switch and negate your hypothesis and conclusion. We're going to switch and negate. And again, those would be the key words that I would memorize to go with contrapositive. Symbolic notation, if not Q, then not P. Again, remember your Q is your conclusion, your P is your hypothesis. So we go back to our original statement. If you give a pig a pancake, then she will want some maple syrup. Now, we're going to switch our hypothesis and conclusion, and we are also going to negate them. So, we know we're going to start with if. So what are we going to say next? If, because we're switching and negating. Josephina. Excellent. If she won't want some syrup. Now, some people are going to say that sounds awkward. It does a little. You could say if she doesn't want some maple syrup, that would be fine because you're not changing the meaning. Okay, it's still talking about whether or not she wants maple syrup. Because if she won't want some maple syrup is a little awkward. And we wouldn't normally say that. So you could say if she doesn't want some maple syrup, that would be absolutely fine. As long as you're not changing the general idea of the part of the sentence. Okay, it's talking about her not wanting maple syrup. As long as you don't change it to something like she's not wanting sprinkles on her ice cream. Okay, you're not changing the general idea, you'll be fine. So if she won't or doesn't want some maple syrup, then now we need to negate our hypothesis. So Sarah, what do you think? Okay. Good. Just don't forget to add the negation. Remember, make it mean the opposite. So how would we do that? Absolutely. Okay. We would put in not. And again, you would tweak it just a little. Okay. We don't want to just say if you not give, right? Grammatically, that's not correct. So you can say if you won't give or you don't give. Good. Then you won't give a pig a pancake. So again, contrapositive, the longest word, you have to do the most for it. You need to switch and negate. So those are our three sentences that we are going to be working with. Okay, so real quick, let's back up. The conditional is the original. The converse, what's my keyword again? Good, converse is switch. Switch that hypothesis and conclusion. Switch your P and your Q. Inverse, what's my keyword for inverse? Negate, good. A lot of times that means adding what word? Yes, good, not. But again, really it's making that part of the sentence mean the opposite. So sometimes you won't have not in there. And contrapositive, longest word. Good, we have to switch and negate. Make sure you know which is which. It is easy to accidentally write the wrong sentence, or if it's matching or multiple choice, pick the wrong one, especially if you're not sure on what each sentence requires. So converse, switch. Inverse, negate. Contrapositive, switch and negate. So before I put you guys into breakout groups, does anyone have any questions so far? I'm not going to turn you completely loose on your own just yet. We are going to go into breakout groups, practice a little bit more, work out those kinks. But does anyone have any questions about the converse, the inverse, or the contrapositive? All right, so now I'm going to switch you into breakout groups. And so I am going to just assign you a group. You're going to pop off into your group. What you guys are going to do before everyone runs in, before I assign your groups, is I am sending everybody this Google Slide assignment. And what you're going to do, if you look at the directions, is you're going to drag and drop the strips below to your correct positions. Okay. The one in purple, which I already have as my conditional, is your starting statement. And then the other three in blue are the ones that either are the converse, the inverse, or the contrapositive. Okay. And so what you're going to do is you're going to click and drag it over into the right area, and I'm going to let you do that together. At this point, they would go into their breakout groups, and what I would do is put one advanced, one proficient, and probably two not proficient students into one group. I'd have 4 groups like that, and then I would probably have a group about 6 of students that I know may struggle with the reading part of this or the writing part. Especially any IAP students that I know this is going to be difficult for. They would be with me, so I could give them that extra support. And then I could also check in on the other 4 groups. What they would do is they would work their slide. The assignment has 10 slides. Each group would get their own slide. I'd give them about 5-10 minutes to work through it. Make sure that they understand that when they come back, they're going to present their answers, and make sure that all of their group members feel comfortable answering one of the questions and explaining why they chose that sentence for the converse or the inverse. It's a formative assessment, just gives me an idea of where everybody's at. Once we completed that, then I would turn them loose onto some independent practice. I would use the independent practice not so much to grade, but I would use it because there's 4 more slides on that Google Slide assignment that they could do individually. But then they could submit it and I could check it. And that would let me know what we would need to do tomorrow for the next lesson. Does everyone have a good handle on this? Are there still a few that are struggling? Are some ready to move into some more enrichment, more challenging sentences with converse and contrapositive? Do some of them do we need to go back and remediate? So that would help me prep and prepare for the next day, and making sure that the students have what they need to master this particular concept. To end the lesson, I would do an exit card and ask them to rate themselves as far as how they feel about the new concept. Do they feel that they are confident in their knowledge? Do they feel like they need a little extra help? Do they feel like they have not a clue as to what's happening? Just to get a feeling of where they feel that they're at. And again, that would help me, along with their independent practice, develop and figure out who needs what for the next day's class. So the end of class, we'd do an exit card. If anyone needed to finish the independent practice that later on that day, that's fine. And of course, I would be available for help if they needed. But the exit card, along with their independent practice, would allow me to design tomorrow's lesson and make sure that they master the converse, inverse, and contrapositive.